and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie and I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Adnett, VP of Sales for Western Europe at Enghouse Interactive. Simon, thanks very much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks, Charlie. Yeah, thanks for having me again, and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. We recorded a couple of conversations last year on the state of the contact center space that went down very well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And I thought I'd maybe kick off this interview in a slightly unusual way by kind of giving you a quick fire list of topics of trending contact center technologies and asking you whether you think they'll be hot or not in in 2025. Does that sound good with you?
Yep, far away.
Excellent. All right, let's start then. The first topic I will choose is generative AI. Do you think this will be hot or not?
Undoubtedly hot.
Yeah. And next, knowledge management.
Yes, hot, and I think very much as it relates to generative AI and the use of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two are very much linked, especially in the contact center. Cloud migrations.
Yeah, I think it's still going to be hot. I think there are still people out there that are making that shift. Absolutely.
And the Microsoft Teams contact center.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be hot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then omnichannel.
Omnichannel's still big, and there's still plenty of people out there that are still on that journey to adopting more channels, particularly digital channels. So yeah, hot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's click to call and click to chat.
Yeah, I think hot, still relevant. Absolutely. Yeah.
And channel deflection.
Yes, hot. It's probably spotting a theme here. Yeah.
Yeah. Next, voice automation and conversational AI.
Yes, absolutely hot.
Absolutely hot. Journey orchestration.
Hot.
Hot. Conversational intelligence.
Yeah, hot, because I think that underpins a lot of what we do. Yeah.
And then voice of the customer.
Yeah, voice of the customer is really hot. I think it's going to be big.
And then proactive customer service.
Hot. Yeah.
Business continuity.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, it's nothing new, but it's still very relevant. So I'd have to say hot. Yeah.
Yeah. Agent assist.
Yeah, absolutely hot.
Again, very much linked to generative AI at the moment as well, that one. And then workforce management.
Yeah, I mean, it still underpins a lot of the efficiencies in the contact center, so absolutely hot.
Yeah. And the final one, automated QA.
Well, I feel like I should be going against the trend, but I can't, I think. Absolutely hot.
I think that's quite telling. I gave you 15 trending topics there, and they were all hot and trending. And I think that tells us a little something, and it's perhaps our first talking point. Given how all these topics are so hot, what do you think that tells us about the current state of the contact center?
I think what it tells us is like there's a lot going on in our space, right? There's some newer emerging technologies, and there are things that people are still dipping their toes in the water in terms of adoption for. But I think there's a lot of things that underpin the functionality of a contact center and the way it operates as an organizational unit, which are just always going to be relevant. So I think that, in terms of whether they're hot, as in they're going to be the biggest talking points of the year, not necessarily, but I couldn't say that they're not hot in the sense that they're just so relevant to the way contact centers operate. So, I mean, things like click to call and click to chat, it's nothing new, but people are still doing it. People are still adopting it. Conversational intelligence and understanding that side of things, it's massive for how contact centers are structured and how they operate. So, yeah. And as you sort of alluded to, things like knowledge management, it's been around for quite some time, but it's so fundamental to driving things like, generative AI and getting higher levels of success with automation that it's hot.
Yeah. I think another example then is business continuity. It was a big topic after the pandemic for sure, but it still seems like a lot of contact centers are still working out their business continuity plans. I know there was a big outage at another kind of a rival of your contact center platform quite recently, and that, again, for all of their customers, that brings that topic bubbling straight to the fore. But let's actually talk a little bit more about knowledge management and Gen AI. Of course, this was a huge topic in 2024. Why do you think it will still be so important for contact centers in 2025?
I think a big part of it is that by sort of there's a danger with generative AI, right? That it can sometimes be the easy way out of doing the hard graft, I think, around knowledge management. And so you can kind of point generative AI at content and have it build responses for you and generate, very plausible bits of text that you can then use. I think the thing is, though, if you want really quality responses that are actually going to result in first contact resolution or actually going to genuinely solve a problem, you need to make sure that the knowledge that's driving the Gen AI is relevant and is accurate and is up to date. And that's all about the curation of that. And that's where the knowledge management piece comes in, I think. A great example would be, you've got a document store and there's a bunch of policy documents in there and you're pointing your Gen AI engine at that and that's driving responses back. Now, if that's sort of leaning towards the most used document, it might mean that you're using an out-of-date policy document because the new one that's been uploaded hasn't been accessed as much yet because it hasn't been around as long. And so you've got to be really careful around these sorts of biases, kind of getting into your responses. And that's where I think, knowledge management and the use of that is still super important.
Yeah, and actually, we recently came out with some research at CX Today, and it found that the most used generative AI use case within the contact center was auto drafting customer responses on behalf of agents, and that fundamentally hinges on knowledge management. So they're having those fundamentals in place is so crucial. Another one of those kind of 15 hot topics, then I'm sure if we put our brains together, we could have come up with 40 around or something. But it's conversational intelligence. And I think this is quite an interesting one because kind of 10, 15 years ago, a lot of the enterprise contact centers kind of deployed and big NLP systems at a high price point. But now we're seeing technology become more democratized. Why do you think it will be trending in 2025?
Well, so I think a big thing for us at Enghouse was we sort of kind of looked at a lot of the solutions that were out there for deriving sort of customer sentiment and things like that. And, at a very base level, you kind of learn that customers that are pleased with something are happy and customers that have had a bad experience are unhappy, which is, it's not a groundbreaking discovery from that point of view. But I think where we can bring down the sort of price point now for transcription of audio and then use the sort of natural language processing to get the conversational intelligence of voice calls as well, then certainly from our perspective, it allows us to understand not just whether a customer's happy or unhappy about an interaction, but what's driving that, get a real understanding of the conversation that took place, the context behind it, and whether there was a suitable outcome. Because, the conversation itself, you might have a customer that was unhappy about something for most of the conversation, but if you can resolve it with a good outcome at the end, then actually the sort of end point is a happy sentiment, even though much of the call might have been tricky from that point of view. And so getting that understanding, I think, is really crucial because you're putting context around, the sort of smiley happy face or the unhappy face that you might have around customer sentiment.
Yeah, and I think especially, we hear a lot about how you can now monitor with generative AI sort of different the customer contact reasons and how you can help to quantify those. But then kind of having conversational intelligence as well can help give you more insight about those intent. So what's causing the broken process? What is the broken process behind the intent? And then you can start to either collaborate with other departments to remove that entirely, or then you can start talking about conversational AI
Yeah.
as well, and where best to implement that. So I think it's enabling as well a smarter approach to conversation automation too. And obviously there's a lot of service teams will be very sort of enthusiastic of just jumping on sort of a conversational AI solution, but having that intelligence behind the deployment will, of course, make it so much more efficient. So that's a really great one. And we also have Agent Assist, and there's again lots of new use cases for this. We talked about earlier auto drafting, customer replies. What sort of use cases for Agent Assist do you think will be really hot in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think auto drafting replies and bringing up suggestions, in real time, so agents sort of have the information they need at their fingertips. We've been doing sort of knowledge management for agents for some time, but I think what's changed now is certainly, again, linking it into generative AI, you can have responses going back to customers that rather than maybe posting, copy and paste of articles or links to go and have a look at this and see if it helps you, then you can actually take a number of different topics, maybe from different documents or different parts of your knowledge management system, and then use generative AI to provide a cohesive response that kind of links those things together. So I think that's where Agent Assist is really going to come into its own, is it's going to allow the agents to sort of have what they need at their fingertips and then go, these are the bits that are relevant for this customer, and provide a response back to the customer that feels natural, rather than, I just got hoofed an automated email that picked me some topics, which is the danger sometimes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think these technologies are incredibly valuable as we talk about how a lot of these simple contacts are leaving the contact center, and how agents now are dealing with increasingly complex contacts, and having those support systems in place will be crucial. I mean, there was also some research I think I recently saw from Microsoft saying that 56% of call center agents were close to burnout. These are the types of implementations, as well as also contact centers must make sure that people and processes are kind of well thought through too. But these implementations can really make a huge.
Well, I think it speeds up the time you can get an agent from sort of coming into the organisation and have them up and running where they can sort of handle more complex queries. And ultimately, that's kind of what you want your agents doing, because the stuff that is maybe sort of lower value, lower complexity, I mean, that's all the low-hanging fruit we're talking about using, conversational chatbots for and things like that, is to try and address those sorts of interactions. So in theory, you've got agents who are skilled human beings who can then handle the more complex things. But what we need to do is give them the tools to make their life, easier from that perspective. But I think hopefully what it also does is it makes the job more interesting as well, because they're dealing with, the more complex, and I guess you could say difficult inquiries, but that's what, us humans are good at doing, right? Is making those sorts of decisions on those sorts of things, that all the things that don't fit in the mold. And that's where I think agent assistance becomes imperative, to try and take some of the stress off them, and help them as an enabler.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess also on that point, there's kind of supervisor assists now, solutions that can help monitor agent interactions and notice when, as use case you mentioned actually earlier for conversational intelligence, notice when their sentiment drops for a prolonged period of time, offer them support through whisper and barge functions like you can get on any contact center platform. I think these sorts of tools are really exciting. And one final exciting technology that I do want to talk about, trending technology, is auto quality assurance. So again, this is one I'm hearing more and more about, although it's one that's been around in contact centers for maybe 10 years now. Why do you think this use case is now starting to spike?
I think it's starting to grow because I think it's starting to work well now. I think is the big difference. I mean, I think automated QA has been around in some form for quite a period of time.
Yeah.
But I think the difference now again is you can phrase the questions that you want the AI to sort of answer or score, if you like, in such a way as to train it to what it's looking for. I mean, a good example I saw the other day was like you might have a thing you want as part of your quality scorecard, which is I would like my agents to introduce themselves and then ask the customer's name as part of the introduction. And so that might be a very simple yes, no question, really, like either the agent did ask for the customer's name or they didn't ask for the customer's name. But what about the scenario where I'm the customer, I call up and I say, hi, I'm Simon. I'm calling about, I don't need to ask the name anymore because the customer's just imparted me with that bit of information. So I don't really want to score the agent down because they don't need to ask that. And so being able to phrase the question in a way that the AI can go, unless that has been asked, don't maybe score it as a no, but score it as a not applicable, for example, so it's not detrimental to the overall score. So I think we're now in a place where we can have a lot more intelligence about the way we evaluate things. As I mentioned before, I think the cost of transcription, certainly we've managed to drive that down a lot by doing that in-house as well with our own tech, which sort of allows us to add more value around what we do on top of that without ending up with a sort of QA solution that's almost, cost prohibitive in many cases. And I think, sort of now we're at the point where you can look at literally every interaction that happens through your contact center and get an understanding of whether you're meeting the sort of types of quality of service that you want to present to your customers. And I think that sort of dovetails into the voice of the customer stuff as well. I think those two are now intrinsically linked because you've got this use of AI where you're looking at sort of looking inward. Are we doing the things we said we wanted to do in terms of how we provide service? And then you've got voice of the customer, which, historically you might be looking at surveys or you might be looking at doing some sort of analysis on certain aspects of interactions. I think now, again, with the natural language understanding and the conversational intelligence, that voice of the customer, you can look across every interaction that happens in the contact center again. And so you can then look at, okay, well, we think we did our bit looking inwards from a quality perspective, but how does the customer feel about the experience? And I think, again, what we certainly can do with our voice of the customer, and I think, is going to become more and more prevalent, is you've got the sentiment side of things going, well, we think the customer was happy or unhappy, but we can actually look into the reasons behind that through the voice of the customer insights. And where that becomes really powerful is, I think that, the contact center, as contact center technology providers, we're often always looking at what new bit of tech can we throw at the contact center to make it more efficient about the way it functions. Well, actually, a huge amount of the demand that comes into many contact centers is what I would class as failure demand, where people are contacting the business because something's gone wrong, like something hasn't worked the way they wanted it to, whether they've received something that wasn't what they were expecting, or whether there's been an issue, they've got a support query about something. So with the voice of the customer insights, if you can look across every interaction that's happening in your contact center and understand kind of the heat map of where the problems are in your organization, and you can go and say to whichever leader's heading up that unit, if you like, you've got a problem here, you need to go and fix it, then you're actually going to make your contact center more efficient, because you're going to get less interactions coming in of people complaining about the problem that's in somebody else's department. So I think the real shift with those two things now is we're not just looking at solving problems within the contact center. We're sort of using the intelligence and all that knowledge that comes in about what's going on in my organization that we can learn from within the contact center, and we're going and solving like real world business problems in the rest of the organization. So I think it's a really exciting time from that point of view, because we're not just doing it on keywords and hot topics. Like, it's real understanding of the conversations that are taking place now. And I think that's going to be the sort of the revolution, if you like, in terms of those technologies and how we use them.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually reminds me of a Gartner paper that I read last year. It kind of came up with the term quality intelligence, and it was talking about the only real way that you can get a 360 degree view of the customer in the contact center is to combine quality insights, conversational analytics, and voice of the customer together. And actually, it strikes me that Enghouse is actually one of the few vendors that actually has all those technologies to enable that too. And yeah, it's gonna be fascinating to see all these kind of technologies converge, and that's something definitely to look forward to in 2025 as well. But I'm sure we could talk about lots of the other trending topics too. I know Microsoft Teams is in the contact center is a big one, especially for Enghouse, but also proactive customer service, journey orchestration, and all these topics. But I think that's a really great place to end today's chat. So thanks very much, Simon, for joining me today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And also thanks to everybody for watching. Bye for now.